So you want to go to an anime convention, huh? Well, let me be your guide. Trust me, I'm a professional. Full disclosure, this also works for non-anime conventions. The anime part is just, kind of part of the branding here. Anyways, let's start with the most important question. How do you find an anime convention? Well, do you live near or in a big city? Well, Google that city and put anime convention right after that. There you go. I'm kidding, of course there's more. Me personally, I highly recommend fancons.com as it gives you a full list of a whole bunch of cons that happen all around the world. However, fancons.com isn't a complete list. You will have to do some searching on Google or Bing or whatever the hell you use to find something that might be in your area. Everywhere is different, so it's up to you to find out what's happening in your community. So now that you know how to find an anime convention, let's go over what I like to call the 3 C's. The 3 C's are the casual, the collector, and the cosplayer. There's obvious overlap among the three, and hell, there's probably something that I'm missing. But that doesn't matter. I'm the professional here. Let me explain the 3 C's so you can have a good idea on how you would like to approach future anime conventions. Up first is the casual. The casual is someone I would describe as someone who likes to walk around the convention center, do some people watching, maybe attend a panel or two, take photos with cosplayers, and maybe buy something from the artist alley. If you think this is more your style, I'd highly recommend bringing clothes and shoes that you're comfortable walking in, a water bottle because sometimes conventions get really hot, a backpack, and your phone charger. When it comes to panels, I'd highly recommend looking up your convention's schedules on their websites, see if something catches your interest, and make your way to wherever the panel is being hosted. It does vary by size. I've been to some conventions where the line is in a different section and then you get walked by volunteers to the actual convention floor. And I've been to others where you can just show up like 5 minutes before the panel starts and boom, there's the panel. If you want to take photos of or with cosplayers, ask nicely, wait your turn after taking photos with someone else, and just be respectful and mindful of others, especially if you're in a crowded area. Try not to take too much space when taking a photo. And the most basic rule of thumb, take a shower, use deodorant, do some basic fucking hygiene. I'm talking to you Smash players, fucking Yu-Gi-Oh players, Magic the Gathering players. Please, shower. Up next is the collector, and out of the 3 C's, I say the collector is probably the most varied. You could either be like me, who likes getting prints from the artist alley, or getting signatures from the guests, or maybe buying cool figures in the vendor hall, etc, etc. Or you can be like one of those dudes who spends $150 on the VIP ticket, brings in a wagon with like 90 Funko Pops inside, and then get them all signed just to resell them. While obviously I am not a fan of the Funko Pop resellers at conventions, unfortunately this advice does work for them too. Just like for the casual, I'd highly recommend bringing clothes and shoes you're comfortable walking in, a backpack or a tote bag for storage. When it comes to getting prints or signatures, comic books, trading cards, whatever it may be, I'd highly recommend bringing a folder, like just a classic one you'd use in an office setting. It just helps hold the papers together, and hopefully it prevents your stuff from getting wrinkled. And while a lot of vendors and artists do have set prices, many of them are willing to haggle with you. Just be reasonable with how you're haggling, I guess. A lot of vendors do prefer cash as it's easier to handle, and occasionally, just depending on where you are, some venues might not have good signal, so a card reader might not be able to connect, so it is a very helpful tool like that. Speaking of cash, me personally, I like to use cash as my budget. I also tend to go over that budget, but that's just a me problem. I'd highly recommend try not to overspend at these cons. It can get really addicting to just blow through your entire paycheck in one go, but it's much better for you if you have a set budget and you just try to stick with that. And props to you if you go under budget. I never do that. The big thing for all conventions is guests. Whether it be a voice actor for an anime, an actor in a movie, or even a comic book writer. Many guests are just normal people who would love to talk to you, but when it comes to the signature itself, many do charge, and prices vary from guest to guest. I'm pretty damn sure that most guests do have their own prints that come free with a signature, so just pay for the signature, you'll get a print that's signed by them. And at bigger conventions that may have like much more mainstream guests, you do have to buy a separate ticket for those, ranging in price. That's how people meet like actual celebrities. But to do that, you actually have to go through your con's website and buy those tickets separately. And so back to the normal guests, I guess. One thing that I'd highly recommend, because I personally use this whenever I go to conventions, I'd highly recommend getting a poster tube. Just one of these bad boys. You can get them on eBay, or not eBay, but Amazon, or maybe just use a cardboard box or whatever. I'm gonna show this off just because I can. As you can see here, I can't really get it on camera, but I'll show it off completely one day. I'm working on a little project where I'm getting a bunch of Dragon Ball voice actors to sign this for me so far. So far I have Christopher Sabat, what's his name, John Bergamer, Linda Young, and Damian Clark to sign this. And eventually I'll work my way up through the rest of the cast. And the poster tube really helps with transporting this and preventing damage, because sometimes I'm a clumsy asshole. But yeah, I'd highly recommend getting a poster tube. And just as a little side note of fun, I've customized mine, put a bunch of stickers on here. I have this little Among Us Goku inside the thing. But it doesn't just have to be a poster if you're doing like a group signing. I've met a dude who had a box of Dragon Balls who he got signed by a good chunk of the cast. I've seen a dude online who has a Shenron Funko Pop signed by a good chunk of the cast. And obviously it doesn't just have to be Dragon Ball. There's this one guy who I know went pretty famous on Reddit for a bit because he had a Captain America shield signed by a good chunk of the MCU actors, which is pretty damn cool. At the end of the day, it's all personal preference on what you want to get signed by who. And last, but certainly not the least, because arguably this is the most famous person who goes to a convention, the cosplayer. When it comes to cosplay whoever the fuck you want. I don't look like Nanami. I think that's a given. But I still cosplayed the character because I love the character and I had so much fun doing it. Cosplay whoever you want. And if anybody says otherwise, they can go fuck themselves. Cosplay is for everybody. One thing I will say about cosplay is that there are 2 rules to them. The main one being follow your convention's guidelines. I've been to one convention because it took place during Easter weekend. They didn't allow you to wear full bunny costumes to look like the Easter bunny. I've also been to other conventions where people are butt booty ass naked, and it was pretty great, not gonna lie. Just look over your convention's websites, just follow those guidelines and you should be fine. And the unofficial rule, I guess, don't be racist. If you're cosplaying a character of another race, it's okay to have a different skin tone. If you're a white dude and you want to cosplay Miles Morales, that's fine. Just don't do blackface. It's cool that you don't do blackface. I think that's a pretty good rule of thumbs there. And just for some tips for cosplayers, if you're going to a convention, but you plan on buying stuff or whatever, and you have a friend who's coming along who isn't cosplaying, I'd highly recommend asking them to be your bag boy. Just hold your backpack, hold your stuff, take photos of you, stuff like that. When I went to Anime Houston a couple years ago and I was cosplaying Nanami, my friend Thomas, he was like willingly being my bag boy. He held my shit, took photos of me when I was with other cosplayers, and it was a great time. Many conventions do have meetups for certain fandoms. That's just something you have to look on their website, on their schedule. And it varies fandom to fandom because some bigger fandoms may not have one while smaller ones might. But you can always email your convention, see if they'll set up an actual meeting time. And when it comes to photos, sometimes people may ask to take photos of or with you. It's up to you whether you would like to take photos with them. I'll be honest, for the first time when someone asked to take a photo of me, I was caught a little off guard, and it's happened to me a couple of times. But honestly, it was just really nice that people appreciated my cosplay. And it's something that probably will happen to you, especially if you do play, or if you're cosplaying a bit more of a popular character. And the most important thing when it comes to cosplay is have fun. While I personally don't pretend to be the characters I cosplay, if you want to be a Zenitsu who chases after Nezuko's, maybe don't do that, but you do you. Because at the end of the day, we're all a bunch of big nerds, heading to the Big Doofus convention. Well, that about wraps up this video, but I do have 2 conventions that I know go all around the United States. I'd highly recommend Fan Expo. I know they have some in Canada. I don't remember where. I love Fan Expo. It is a personal favorite of mine to go to. And that one's just a general nerd con, but I know like a lot of anime fans always go there. And there's also Collecticon. That one is a bit more vendor focused because I know it, because when I went, it was a lot of trading cards. It was a lot of Pokemon cards, sports cards, stuff like that. But I still had a great time. When I went last year, Steve Aoki had a concert, and that was pretty fucking cool. So yeah, I highly recommend those 2 conventions if they're in your area. That's about it for this guide. If you have any questions about conventions and stuff, feel free to ask in the comments and I'll try to answer. But yeah, make sure y'all have a fun convention season, y'all. Yeah.